Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Tuesday, November the 26th, 2024. Today I want to talk about Neptune in Pisces. Neptune's been moving through Pisces for a long time, since 2011, and it's coming to the end of the sign. So next year it moves out. I think it goes retrograde, goes back in, but I think that by 2026 it will be out and it will be in Aries. I mean, it goes into, as I said, it goes into Aries next year, early next year. But because of retrograde motion, it sort of goes in and out of the sign. So Neptune in Pisces, I think there is an association with wokeness. And that's what I want to talk about, Neptune in Pisces and wokeness, and what the relationship is all about. Of course, I'm going to be talking about the astrology and I Ching for today as well, but just to give you an idea about what I want to discuss in this video. So there was this advertisement by Jaguar cars. I think it came out on sort of November the 19th, which has got a lot of negative publicity, and this advertisement was regarded as being very sort of woke, and it sort of had these sort of people on it who, I don't know, they were dressed strangely and they seemed to be somewhat androgynous, and this was not the kind of image that car owners perhaps want to be associated with. And I've seen videos of people saying they're going to get rid of their Jaguar because of this. And there are echoes of the Bud Light ad, where you had this transgender woman, what's her name, Dylan Mulvaney, mentioning Bud Light. That was a couple of years ago I think she had a video on her Instagram. And again, this destroyed the brand. This is something I want to talk about. Now, I should make it clear that the word woke has evolved. I mean, originally when it was sort of first used, I think in the sort of early 20th century, I think it was used before, but I think in terms of perhaps in sort of recently, it was used in the 20s and 30s in the African American community, so that you could to be aware of the prejudice and the discrimination and the violence being used against African Americans. I think that there was the Scottsboro trial in the sort of, I think it was the early 1930s, somewhere around, was it late 20s, early 30s, when these 9 African Americans were accused of rape, and it was a very big trial, and it was just, the charges were completely set up, and it caused a lot of upset naturally, and so wokeness was all about being aware of prejudice and discrimination. And there was a singer called Huddle Ledbetter who sort of said, best stay woke. Best stay woke, keep their eyes open. So that seems to be quite a commendable way to use woke. I mean, woke is that we should be aware, and we should be aware of discrimination and violence, particularly against an ethnic group. And so that's reasonable. But woke has taken on a new meaning, and it's not just, it's encompassing diversity and ethnic diversity and racial diversity, but it's become this sort of catch-all for sort of transgender, and there's a lot of sexuality there and diversity, and it's taken on a meaning that it didn't actually have in the 20s and 30s. So, or rather, perhaps that meaning has been expanded massively. So, in saying that, I need to say that just to make it clear that I'm aware of what woke means and what its origins were, and its origins were completely commendable, and I think we should all be woke in the sense of how it was used in the 20s and 30s. But I think wokeness has taken on perhaps a new meaning in the modern era, and it's been around for a long time. It's not something that happened when Neptune went into Pisces in 2011, but it has become particularly significant, and it could be argued that wokeness in its modern sense was one of the reasons why Trump won the election in 2024, the latest election. You could even argue that was why he won in 2016. And so I'll be looking at that in terms of Neptune. I may say things which may sound a bit flippant in terms of some of the concerns people have at the moment with Neptune in Pisces. So in a way, I'm giving you a bit of a trigger warning for later in the video. But anyway, before I look in detail at Neptune in Pisces, I want to consider the astrology and the I Ching for today, which is Tuesday, November the 26th, 2024. So here is the positions of the planets at noon today in New York, and the moon is in Libra. At noon is at 1433 of the sign, so it's kind of more of the same with moon in Libra. With moon in Libra, we are perhaps in general maybe more sociable than usual. I mean, that we may value civilized conversation. Moon in Libra is about balance, making sure that we fit in. We don't want to say anything that causes too much disturbance, although many of us will know exactly what it takes to cause a disturbance. We know how to use language to upset people, but I think most of us are going to hold back. Now, the moon in Libra does make a trine to Jupiter in Gemini. So moon Jupiter Gemini, moon Jupiter trine is something that by and large is pretty fortunate. You've got a natural flow, perhaps a natural luck with moon Jupiter. I mean, Jupiter is a lucky planet, and so if you've got moon trine Jupiter, we might be luckier than average. So perhaps it's a time to sort of get things moving. But we shouldn't be too ambitious about it. We shouldn't forget that this is the last quarter moon now. We've got a new moon on Sunday, so the moon is very much waning. So there may be limits to what we can achieve, and also we've got Venus quincunx Jupiter. So there you can see Venus is quincunx Jupiter, 150 degrees apart. That Venus quincunx Jupiter may be about feeling that we should be able to enjoy ourselves. We should be able to have a fun day, but it's a quincunx. There's a struggle there, a little bit of a struggle. We can't quite fit two things together. We need to bring them together in order to really be happy, but it's hard work. I'm not saying we can't bring them together, but we need to do it in a way that is as organic as possible. When you see a Venus-Jupiter contact, there's always that possibility of taking things too far, perhaps spending too much money, being too emotional, just not doing it naturally. So we have to I don't know, could we throw money at it or try too hard? So finding enjoyment may not be entirely easy, although I think for many of us it is going to be quite important. And really, that is it. There's not a lot happening today. Of course, Mercury is stationary retrograde. Yesterday, I spent a lot of time talking about Mercury going retrograde. Mercury does go retrograde London time this morning at 2:41 a.m. But if you're in the Americas, it will have gone retrograde sort of last night, or perhaps even earlier if you're in Hawaii or Alaska. So that's something we're having to deal with. I mean, we might have been dealing with it yesterday. We're dealing with it today as well. Mercury coming to a standstill. So a lot of what I said yesterday about Mercury going stationary retrograde still holds. Mercury is still on this fixed star Ras Al Hag. That is where it goes retrograde, where it comes to a grinding halt. And Ras Al Hag is the head of the snake charmer, and it might be about dealing with things that we think we can handle, but maybe we can't. We think it's a nice game, charming a snake. We think that intellectually that it's all okay. Our head is telling us that we can do it, but a snake is not necessarily a predictable animal. So perhaps we have to be careful if we're charming snakes. That's probably not something we should be doing. So that might be how Mercury conjunct Ras Al Hag works. It can also be difficult in terms of relationships. It can be about having perhaps thoughts about another person which may not be very constructive. There might be a lot of resentment there with Mercury conjunct Ras Al Hag as it does come to a halt. So that's pretty much it, geocentrically. From a heliocentric perspective, there also is not a great deal going on. Though before I look at the heliocentric picture, I should just quickly look at what's happening in Sydney, Australia. So Sydney, Australia, it's a similar picture. The moon is in Libra. That moon trine Jupiter may not be quite so strong in Sydney, Australia, or in Australasia in general. The moon is conjunct the South Node, and I suppose if you are in Australasia, be careful with your feelings. Your feelings may take you somewhere that you should have grown out of. Moon conjunct the South Node, and it might be easiest to compromise, easiest to just follow the crowd. But the North Node is in Aries, and so if you're in Australasia, do make sure you assert yourself. You've still got to take other people with you. You've got to sort of get people to understand your perspective. And also, the moon in Libra is making a sextile to Mars. So in Australasia and East Asia, that moon sextile Mars could actually be very useful. You can assert yourself, and you can do it in such a way that doesn't upset people. People will understand what you're doing. Now, from a heliocentric perspective, again, there is not a great deal happening, but still I will look at the heliocentric picture. So today, with the Sun at the center of the solar system, we have Mercury semi-sextile Saturn. So there's Mercury in Aries, fast-moving planet. Heliocentrically, it goes really fast, and it is sextile. Saturn, and so that can make us a little restrained. Mercury is the way we communicate, way we talk, the way we try and get our message across. If it's a semi-sextile Saturn, not sextile, semi-sextile, 30 degrees apart, then we might find that it's just difficult to say what we want to say. Something just might be holding us back. And also we've got Venus sextile Uranus. Now, that's actually quite a pleasant aspect. I mean, it's a sextile. It's not overly dramatic, but it's somewhat exciting without being overwhelming. And so perhaps with a bit of conscious effort, we can stir things up in terms of relationships. Whatever relationships we're involved with, we can perhaps create something new. And it might be a time when there's a possibility of variety, and maybe you can get to know someone in a new way with that heliocentric sextile between Venus and Uranus. But that's pretty much it heliocentrically. And now I want to look at things from a perspective of the 12 signs. Now, this is a video where I think what I have to say for the 12 signs is possibly going to be briefer than usual, because I'm not convinced that there is a great deal to talk about. And a lot of what I want to say today, I said it yesterday, because Mercury is going stationary retrograde. But anyway, we'll see what happens. So these are my forecasts for the 12 signs for today, which is Tuesday, November the 26th, 2024. Aries, it's another day when you do understand that other people probably can't be avoided, and I think that you will benefit by looking at other people's perspectives. You don't have to sympathize with another person's perspective. You don't have to do anything another person's way. You can be independent-minded, but you still have to consider what other people are thinking and what they're planning, and also consider their sensibilities. People do have sensibilities, and if you go too far in one direction, you might upset them. So try to understand try to understand what's going on, but at the same time maintain your own independence, and be on the lookout for ways in which you can benefit from other people. I think you can, because the moon is making a trine to Jupiter, and that moon trine Jupiter allows you to certainly enjoy people's company, and if there's something you want, something you need to get some advice on, then I think that moon trine Jupiter could be really very helpful. And yes, you can get some good advice from other people, and other people can point you in the right direction. And also, Aries, I think that you've got your own contribution to make. In fact, you've got a considerable contribution to make. You have at the moment got lots of things to say, lots of things you want to talk about, and it may feel that now would be a good time to sort of talk about things, and perhaps in a slower way. Perhaps, recently, as you've tried to explain yourself, you've perhaps taken things too quickly, and you haven't always been in a situation where other people have understood you. But things are slowing down, and I think now is a time when people will listen. And once you've got their attention, there are ways in which you can help them. You've got a fundamental positivity, which is there, and this positivity has been around, I think, for the last week. As Mars has come to, as Mars has slowed down, because remember, Mars is about to go retrograde very, very soon. I think it's December the 6th that Mars goes retrograde, and as it goes retrograde, it's not that you're necessarily feeling any negative effects. In fact, you may be starting to focus on the goodness out there, giving it time. And so when you deal with other people, do focus on what is good about them and encourage them. You can be very encouraging. And I think now might be a time when you can give people an opportunity. Perhaps they haven't had this opportunity before. An opportunity to show what you can do, what they can do. So give everyone a chance, but you don't have to give them a complete chance. I mean, it is about you. You are an Aries, and you do have to look after yourself. The North Node remains in Aries. It's because the North Node goes backwards. In fact, sooner or later, the North Node is going to go out of Aries and into Pisces. But right now, the North Node is in Aries, and this is your path forward. Ultimately, you need to be the one making the decisions in a sort of a very big concept in terms of the big picture. But on a day-to-day level, right now, you have to give people a chance. Because, if you don't give people a chance and you just think about yourself, you're going to be doing the wrong thing. So it's a day when you need to just get that balance right, and I think that is something that you definitely can do, and other people can be fortunate for you, and also you can be fortunate for them. So it just may be a situation where everyone can benefit. Taurus, it may be a day that is somewhat uneasy. I mean, as far as you're concerned, it does seem that very, very much are things that you want to do. You are feeling that you are in a bit of a hurry. You've got ideas and you've got an impetus, and there is a certain impatience to you. But how far can that impatience go? I mean, you might want things to happen now this minute, but are they really going to happen now this minute? I don't think so. And if you try to take things too fast and you're in too much of a hurry, I don't think that you're going to accomplish very much. Sort of instead, you need to take a slower approach, and you also need to understand that you're not going to get things straight away. So if you see something, you might jump to a conclusion that this is what it is all about, but that's probably not what it is all about. And you have to be patient. You have to give yourself a chance to sort of allow things to sort of soak in, try to understand what something is about. Give yourself time. It may not be about today, it may be about today and tomorrow, just getting used to it, watching it, and then at some stage you will have a sense of understanding, but I don't think that's going to happen right now. So be patient and don't feel that there's anything you can do to force the pace. And we have also Venus making a quincunx to Jupiter. So Venus in Capricorn, quincunx Jupiter in Gemini. Your natural impulse is to try to be slow and perhaps disciplined. That's the way you'd like things to be. That's the right approach. But there are, of course, temptations to try to be too fast, too quick, and to want things all at once. And so don't allow yourself to be put off, and don't allow yourself to be greedy, wanting everything at once, whatever that greed is all about. I mean, I think that most Taurians do have a greedy streak. So something they want. Indeed, you could say that if a Taurus doesn't have any indulgences, there's something to worry about. So every Taurus has an indulgence, and that's nothing to be ashamed of. But sometimes indulgence can be taken too far, and perhaps with that Venus quincunx Jupiter, you may be tempted to go too far, and maybe you're just going to be concentrating on something that just right now is not useful. It might make you feel good, or it might at least has a promise, the apparent promise of making you feel good, but does it really make you feel good? So in that sense, perhaps Taurus, you should bide your time and just not feel that it's necessary to understand things all at once. But still, there is this impatience to you. There's an impatience with the world, that somehow it's not going fast enough, and you'd like things to go faster, but it's not going to go faster. And you perhaps have to be satisfied with small gains. These gains are not going to be particularly spectacular, but that should be good enough. Now, as far as the specific area of relationships is concerned, from a heliocentric viewpoint, Venus is making a sextile to Uranus. And so with Venus sextile Uranus, that might indicate that relationships might take an interesting turn. Maybe you might meet someone unexpectedly, or you might be able to show a new and perhaps unusual side to your personality, and or at least to the way you express your personality, which another person finds interesting. So with relationships, be ready for the unexpected, and there just might be a sense of excitement. And so don't be afraid of excitement. And particularly if someone does something or says something unexpected, but was unexpected, you shouldn't be shocked by it. You might actually see this as an opportunity. And in terms of yourself, you might do something that kind of goes against the script. People have made assumptions about you, and you may do something which somehow changes those assumptions. Gemini. Well, yesterday, in my video yesterday, I talked about the fact that Mercury is going stationary retrograde, and now for sure it is stationary retrograde. And yes, it's stationary retrograde conjunct this fixed star Ras Al Hag, and so I think this is another day when other people need to be treated with a certain amount of caution, and also the way you deal with other people should be treated with caution. Your approach may not always be good, and you may make some false assumptions, and be particularly wary of having negative thoughts about another person. It's quite natural to have negative thoughts. Nothing wrong with having negative thoughts. But just do consider the possibility that the basis for your negative thoughts might be false. Perhaps it's just a question you haven't understood someone enough, or you could be blaming someone for something that isn't really their fault. Indeed, it could be your fault. And if there's a situation today which you're not comfortable with, and as far as you're concerned, you weren't responsible for it, it's just important that you don't automatically blame someone for it. Some things just happen, and no one is at fault. One really shouldn't rush to blame. I do think that really, really matters. Now, Mercury retrograde aside, we do have the moon in Libra, and the moon is making a trine to Jupiter, and Jupiter is, of course, in Gemini. So that moon-Jupiter trine, I think for you, Gemini, is something very, very fortunate. And it's a time when there's no reason why you can't feel comfortable. And now you may not want to be comfortable, actually. You may feel that there are things bothering you, there are things you need to worry about. Geminis can sometimes do that, I think. It's like they get ready to go into something of not a rage, but they're getting ready for frenetic thought and frenetic searching, and they're just ready for it. It might be a lost object. You're looking forward at some weird, perverse level to spending 2 hours looking for a lost object, and then you find this lost object, and it's all for nothing. Or perhaps you're ready for a bit of hostility. You might find it's kind of intellectually stimulating to get involved in an argument, or to come up with reasons why someone might be wrong, and then suddenly something happens and there's nothing to worry about, and it's a bit of an anticlimax. So it might feel like that. So you might be ready for a conflict, you might be ready to get worked up about something, and then things change and you realize perhaps that you're all dressed up with nowhere to go. And so you should be happy if you see evidence that things are calming down, if you see evidence that someone you thought was a problem is actually, it's a nothing, that they're not going to bother you. You've got freedom, you've got choices. And I do think that moon trine Jupiter, you've certainly got choices, and you're in a situation where you can yeah, you can make your own decisions and you can do things your way. And so what are you going to do? You can with this moon in Libra, you can make something which is potentially of lasting value, but make sure that it's not just of value to you. Ideally, make sure that if possible, that other people appreciate what you're doing. Now, you don't have to put it in their face, but you have to just be a little aware of the society in which you live. What does the society in which you live? What does it appreciate? What does it value? And perhaps you can add to that value. You can contribute to society. It's not just about you. And perhaps you need to be sort of aware of what's going on in the collective. Collective is always important. I mean, later in this video I'm going to be talking about Neptune and Pisces in detail, and I do want to talk about the collective. So Gemini, do consider your role in the collective. But overall, Moon trine Jupiter is fortunate. So if you try your hand at something, then chances are it will work in your favour. And certainly if you're in a situation where it's a coin toss, where something may work, something may not work, I think chances are, if it's a coin toss, it will go your way. And at the same time, I think it's okay to be optimistic. Optimism can be taken too far, and I suppose when one is optimistic, one should try to ground it, and one should not get too caught up with fantasy. And so, where does fantasy end and realistic optimism start? And perhaps you have to get that borderline right. But if you feel, Gemini, that things could be better, then I think that they could be better. And don't forget, Gemini, your own fundamental spirituality. Geminis can often have a problem with spirituality because they can overthink it. But maybe it's a time when you need to not overthink things. If you really believe that something is possible, or you believe that something is looking after yourself, that there is some higher reality beyond the material world, just go with it. See where it takes you. Cancer, we should probably make it simple and say, well, the main aspect today is a sextile between the moon and Jupiter. And the moon is in Libra, Jupiter's in Gemini, and I think that you're going to feel comfortable, or rather you can feel comfortable, or you deserve to feel comfortable. It's not a day, Cancer, where you should be struggling or trying to be someone you're not. You can just do what feels right. And the moon trine Jupiter is about being lucky, and it's about your own luck. It's not about anyone else's luck, and it's not about luck that takes place in sort of a public setting. This is about your private luck and you doing things in your own way, at your own pace, and you do them well, and you just know that you're just on the right track, and things just work out. Now, in terms of your security, I think there are things to be said there. For every Cancerian, security matters. It's a key facet of being a Cancerian, and right now, with the moon moving through Libra, you want to be grounded, and I think that you can be grounded, and there's no need to move outside your comfort zone. You don't have to do what another person tells you to do. If you don't want to do something, then say no. And it's also about considering, where you're living, your home, and making sure it's all as perfect as possible. It can be as perfect as possible, and your idea, it can be. Well, it can't be perfect because perfection is an impossible ideal, but things can be comfortable, and you can make things more comfortable, and you are helped by the fact that the moon is trine Jupiter, because Jupiter just gives you just a natural good fortune, and Jupiter is a planet that does have a relationship with your sign, because Jupiter is exalted in Cancer, and so Cancer, just anchor yourself today, and don't really feel pressured. It's just absolutely unnecessary. And as far as relationships are concerned, whatever the relationships are about, there may be a little bit of unease, perhaps because you're very much, I think, focused on yourself and what you want to do, and you want to be comfortable, and it may be that another person is having different ideas, and they may find your approach sort of ever so slightly irritating, or they don't really understand it. So I would have said, Cancer, be wary of relationships unless you and the other person are just totally on the same wavelength. If you're dealing with people who are on a different wavelength from you, then perhaps they should be avoided. And that includes people who you might be very close to. It might be someone you live with. You can't be always on the same wavelength all the time, and it may be that there is a passing incompatibility, a passing irritation, and you just need to accept it. And we're talking about something very short term. So just for today and perhaps into tomorrow, there's no need to spend too much time with another person who you don't entirely feel comfortable with. And you might feel comfortable with them in a couple of days' time, but just right now, I think that you are very sensitive, and I think you very much appreciate your own space. Leo, you feel that it's a time to make things happen. You don't want to just stay in one place. And part of the reason for this is that we've got a trine aspect forming between the Sun and Mars. This Sun trine Mars is something that I've been talking about quite a lot, and I think this Sun trine Mars aspect becomes exact tomorrow, but the Sun and Mars are really less than a degree apart. And so, it is a time, Leo, where you want to be heard and you want to make things happen, and you're perhaps sort of bolder than usual, and you're perhaps ready to sort of jump in, tell the world who you are, tell people who you are. I think socially you're going to be relatively bold. You're going to want to introduce yourself, talk to people, force through new connections. And under normal circumstances, such an approach might seem a bit risky, a bit dangerous, might cause offence, but somehow no. I think that the reason is, Leo, that you're fundamentally a good-natured person, and I think that everyone's going to pick up on the fact that you are a good-natured person. And also we've got Moon trine Jupiter, and Moon trine Jupiter is a wonderfully communicative aspect from a Leo viewpoint. You can just talk freely. The things you say will sound fine. It's not really the content of your words, the content of your statements that matter. It doesn't really matter what you say. You just say what's on your mind. You don't have to go too deeply into things. In fact, it's not a good time to be going too deeply into things. You just want to take things at a fairly surface level, enjoy yourself, make sure that people know who you are, and I think that you will really have a big impact, and people will listen to you, and I think they will understand you as well. I mean, it's a time when you can show people what you can do, and you can be somewhat boastful, but not too boastful. I mean, every Leo needs a little bit of attention, and by talking up some of your achievements and some of your abilities, I think that will be fine, provided you don't go too far. And I suppose we should also say that, what's happening at the moment is we've got a grand trine in fire signs. This grand trine has just been around for a long time, but it's very much there. It's very much in existence. We've got the Sun, trine Mars, Sun, trine the North Node. So things really are moving. And, you have got your spark. And, Leo is a fire sign. And, aside from your own behavior, with fire signs, it's very, very easy to focus on just behavior, what someone is doing. But sometimes one forgets about the processes underlying the action. And I think that's something you should be thinking about. And the processes underlying the actions are just having a knowledge. You are motivated by knowledge. And by knowledge, I mean just knowing something. And knowing that something is true. And that might be a motivator. And I kind of like to sort of quote that Jung point about God. Remember, Carl Jung was a Leo, and it was, of course, Carl Jung said, when he was asked whether he believed in God, he said something like he did not believe in God, but because he knew that God existed. He just knew, and so it is about knowledge. And I think that grand trine with Mars, Sun, and the North Node is about knowledge. It's just about knowing something and being absolutely 100% certain. Now, you could say that it's actually quite dangerous to be 100% certain. I mean, some of the worst mistakes in history are made by people who are 100%, who feel that they're 100% certain. So, yeah, sure, you have to bear that in mind. But sometimes it's okay to be 100% certain. I mean, it's not like you're planning on invading Russia, for example. Of course, Napoleon was a Leo, of course, wasn't he? I don't know whether Napoleon was 100% certain it was going to be okay to invade Russia. But, provided you're not doing anything dramatic like that, then I think it's actually okay to have a considerable amount of certainty. Virgo, as I said yesterday, Mercury is stationary, retrograde, and that is important. So I need to sort of kind of say it again, just to make it clear. Mercury is coming to a standstill. It has come to a standstill. And inevitably, that is going to have an effect on you. And you may feel that things really are slowing down, that things just absolutely are not moving. And that sounds bad, doesn't it? But, there are advantages of things slowing down until they're not moving at all. Because, when things are slowing down, you have an opportunity to see them. If they're moving too fast, you just see a blur. But you're not seeing a blur. You can see things almost in slow motion, perhaps. And I'm talking about the important things that perhaps in the past you hadn't fully understood because it perhaps felt it was a changing situation and you could never really get a grip with it. But now you can see things, as they are, and this perhaps allows you to have an understanding which you just couldn't have before. So there are certainly advantages in Mercury going stationary retrograde, and it's also just a time when you can ground yourself. And Mercury's in Sagittarius. It's in this low profile sign in your chart. I mean, I know that Sagittarius has a reputation for being very active, for things going on all the time, but in the Virgo chart, Sagittarius, it's still very active, but as it is for everyone, but it's at the roots of who you are. And so that action and that understanding and those thought processes, they don't have to translate into anything going on externally. So with Mercury going stationary retrograde, it might be an important time for you when you can just stop what you're doing and it's just that moment of peace. I mean, maybe it's almost like in the eye of the storm. There's just a moment of quietness when you can get perspective. And, when Mercury goes faster, indeed goes faster retrograde, over in a couple of days' time, there will be more of a sense of normality. But just right now, things are quiet, things are still, and you can see things. And perhaps you need to use this time to give yourself a perspective and perhaps realize that maybe some things that you've been doing in the past, may not have been absolutely 100% right, and they could perhaps have been done better. Now, does this all mean that you should do nothing today? Well, I suppose you could do nothing. On the other hand, the moon is making a trine to Jupiter, and moon trines Jupiter. When the moon trines Jupiter, it's often a very fortunate time for everyone. Jupiter is the greater benefic. It may be going retrograde, but the moon in Libra is still trine Jupiter, and I think that you can take advantage of that trine, provided you go about it the right way. I think that this trine for you could relate to the material, to the mundane world, and I think that there are ways in which you can benefit from the material world. So if there are things that you want, things that you want to get hold of with this moon trine Jupiter, it may just be a question of asking. So if you feel a need, perhaps a material need today, and it's bothering you, in fact, there may be a certain amount of resentment here because Mercury, your ruler, is conjunct the fixed star Ras Al Hag, the head of the snake charmer, the brightest star in the constellation of Ophiuchus. That does raise a possibility of resentment and of sort of negativity, and you might think that you're being denied things. But if you ask with moon trine Jupiter, you might find that things actually move for you just like that. And the worst that can happen is, I think, in most cases, that you'll just be rejected. So, whether there's something, if it's something you want, ask for it. Perhaps if there's money that you feel you'd like to get hold of, maybe you can investigate the possibilities. I mean, it may be perhaps a good time to ask for more money or ask for money that's owed to you. I mean, you've got to evaluate the situation, but moon trine Jupiter it does bring a certain amount of luck. So perhaps it's a day when you can sort of take advantage of that luck. Libra, the moon continues its movement through your sign, and like yesterday, you feel a sense of arrival, that you're somewhere where you should be, that things are working out, that you understand other people, you understand where you are. I don't think that there's much in the way of confusion today. And, from a social perspective, I think that things look pretty good. And that's always important for a Libran. Librans want their social lives to be flowing, and I think that their social lives actually are flowing, or at least they can be flowing. And the moon in Libra is making a trine to Jupiter, and so that moon trine Jupiter, I think for you is pretty fortunate. And in a general sense, things should work out for you. In a specific sense, moon trine Jupiter should sort of key into your fundamental optimism. I mean, you can be fundamentally optimistic. You can be optimistic about other people. You can be optimistic about what is possible, what is going to happen next. I understand there's a lot of fear and negativity around us, around all of us, but somehow with that moon trine Jupiter, you can cut through it, and you can start to understand the possibilities, and you can think that there is a better future out there. And so Libra, it's very important that you don't limit yourself. It's not that kind of time. So explore something, try something new. What's the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen is it doesn't work out. You don't enjoy it. It doesn't feel like you're going anywhere. That's the worst that can happen. What's the best that can happen? The best that can happen is that you can find a sort of a whole new array of possibilities. And today, as you go about things, you can actually afford to be quite assertive. So if you want something to happen, you can basically tell the world that this is what you want, and you can be very clear about it. And I suppose you might be concerned that if you're too assertive, you might get a negative response, but I think today it will just feel very natural. And you're helped by the fact that the moon is in Libra. Because the moon is in Libra, you just understand the way things are going. You just have that natural understanding. So I don't think you're going to make mistakes, and I think that whatever you do, you'll do it in a way that is very appropriate. And also, you don't have to do things on your own. There's plenty of support around, and indeed, you don't have all the answers, and the right people can just make things just so much easier for you. I mean, the right people. I mean, you can't expect everyone to be on your wavelength. You can't expect everyone to be supportive, but some people are going to be extremely supportive. They've got so much to offer. And if you haven't got the energy, or if you haven't got all the energy you need, and I actually think you've actually got quite a lot of energy, but if you haven't got all the energy you need, then I think that with the Sun making a trine to Mars, I think that you can find people, that they might be friends, colleagues, or maybe someone you've never met before, but there are people there who have sufficient energy to see things through, and you can certainly enlist their cooperation. So Libra, there's a lot going on today. There should be a lot going on today, and I think that you can be assertive, and I think that you can perhaps be helped by other people's energetic approach. And so you also, of course, benefit from the fact the moon is trine Jupiter. So you should not be satisfied with what's in front of you. There can always be more, and do look for new horizons. You live in an expanding universe. I mean, I suppose we all live in an expanding universe, but today you live in an expanding universe, and you need to take advantage of it all. Scorpio. Scorpio, there are several ways of looking at today. I mean, on one hand, you might say, well, the moon's in Libra, and it's a sign just before Scorpio. And so perhaps at some level, you just feel that you don't want to be bothered because there's no point, and you just feel that things are just not fully lined up for you. And so it might just be best to wait until the situation clarifies. And that approach is absolutely fine. On the other hand, you could say that things are actually happening. And we've got the sun making a trine to Mars. Mars is your ruler. The sun has been getting closer and closer to the trine to Mars, and well, it's actually exact tomorrow. And so you might say, oh well, let's wait until tomorrow. The sun is trine Mars, and I suppose the moon will be starting to move into Scorpio tomorrow. But I don't think you should necessarily wait. I think that with the sun moving to a trine of Mars, I think that aspect is very energizing, and it's about deciding what is important. What is important to you at the moment? What are you working on? What are you preparing? What is the big initiative? Now, it may be that now might be the time to do what perhaps you were planning on doing tomorrow. I know there's that sort of maxim, why do today what you can put off until tomorrow? But I'm not convinced you should put it off until tomorrow, because the moon is making a trine to Jupiter today, and moon trine Jupiter, regardless of your sign, is a fortunate aspect. And so you could wait until the moon is in late Libra or into Scorpio to kick something off, but I don't think you should necessarily wait. It may be that now is the time, and with that sun trine Mars, you have a lot of energy, and also Mars is trine the North Node, so we've got this grand trine, Sun, Mars, North Node. This grand trine has been building up for quite a long time now. I suppose it's been building up for the last few days, but now it's becoming exact, and the time to at least start may have actually arrived. So don't be too cautious. I mean, you've still got to use your Scorpio feelings to work your way forward and to understand what the right way of doing things are. And maybe what we're talking about, Scorpio, is a slow start, rather than waiting until tomorrow or even the day after to begin something, and perhaps thinking you're going to start with a bang. Maybe you should just have a sort of a gradual escalation, put in a little bit of effort, move forward slowly and allow things to build up. And then at a certain stage, you'll be ready, and things will things will really start to move. And you're going to be helped today by the fact that you're going to be able to give a good account of yourself. You'll be good at explaining things. You'll be able to tell people why your way is the best way. And if you need anyone's cooperation or help, I think you'll just know how to ask for it without coming over as being pushy or manipulative. In fact, Scorpio, you can make people feel good about themselves today. This is a capacity you've actually been having for the last week or so. It's not something. It's not something one-off. It's the fact that we have Mercury coming to a standstill. Mercury's moving very slowly now. Mars is moving very slowly, and because Mercury is now stationary, Mars is about to go stationary. So that means, Scorpio, that states of mind at the moment are lasting for longer than usual. And so you can have bad states of mind lasting for a long time. You can also have good states of mind lasting for a long time. And one good state of mind, which is lasting for quite a long time, is this just ability to be positive, to be optimistic, especially in terms of how you are talking to people and how you're able to deliver your message. It's just a natural skill you've got at the moment. So I think it's just important to put yourself in a situation where you're always able to take advantage of it. I think that it is a time, Scorpio, where people will give you the benefit of the doubt. And so I think that this further helps you in terms of achieving whatever you feel you need to achieve. Now, one final thing I should point out is that Venus is making a quincunx to Jupiter. And that Venus quincunx Jupiter might mean that certain people are a little more irritating than usual. And perhaps you need to understand what's happening. It may be that it's not just you looking for things. It's other people are looking for things and they can't really find them. And you can feel that irritation and you may actually be annoyed by that irritation. But on a positive note, Scorpio, you can perhaps help people find what they're looking for. You may be annoyed by them, you may be irritated by them, but you have a fundamental good nature. And so a little bit of your time, even if you don't give that time willingly, could, or at least you may not give it willingly, or you may not give it gracefully, but however you give it, if you can just give people a little bit of your time, it can make a big difference to them. Sagittarius. Sagittarius, I would have said that things are starting to look pretty good for you. I mean, I think they looked pretty good for you yesterday. I think that today, arguably, things are looking even better. We have the moon making a trine to Jupiter, and with the moon making a trine to Jupiter, you are feeling good about yourself, and you know how to give a good account of yourself. So in social settings, I think that you are, I would have said, pretty effective. You know what people want. You know what to say, and you find other people interesting. Now, you can take things too far. Fundamentally, it is about you, and it should be about you. But you can give people a little bit of your time, but just don't give people too much of your time. And as I think I said yesterday, you can't compromise your fundamental creativity. It is about you, but I think you can afford to share some of who you are. You can share your insights, share what you're doing without damaging yourself, without reducing your impact. Obviously, if you take things too far, you spend too much time socializing, too much time worrying about what other people are saying, what other people are suggesting, then of course you could start to weaken yourself. But I think you don't have to do that. So just in terms of your social life, have fun, but it's important that you know your limits. Now, also what's happening today is that we've got Sun trine Mars, and I've been talking about that, and I have to repeat it. This Sun trine Mars is exact tomorrow, and this Sun trine Mars is high energy. You've got the Sun in Sagittarius, trine Mars in Leo, and it really does allow you to, put everything you got into your own projects, into exploration, and understanding what is available. And there should not be many limits I won't say that you should know no limits. We all need limits, but really, there's no need to restrict yourself. Now, there may come a point where you start to ask yourself questions, and you might be saying to yourself, "What is this possible? Is this too good to be true? Maybe you should hold back a little. Maybe something might go wrong." I mean, such thoughts are natural, and I suppose you could say that they're healthy, but today, I'm not quite sure how healthy they really are. I think that it may be a day when you need to push things as far as you can and not create unnecessary roadblocks, not create unnecessary reasons why something can't happen. You will reach a natural limit. You don't have to create that limit for yourself. You'll know when to stop, but don't stop too early, because there might be a possibility that if you stop too early, then you might be missing an opportunity, and I don't think that that's something you want to happen. But overall, Sagittarius, it looks like another really good day for you. Capricorn, at the moment, you do seem to be having some doubts. You're perhaps thinking that things are not working as they should be, and perhaps you are of the opinion that maybe certain things have been taken too far, and you want to pull back a little, or maybe you want to reverse things, or maybe you want to press the back button. And I'm just wondering whether that's actually reasonable. I mean, the clock always moves forward. I mean, you can't take the clock back. It's just not possible. Not 1 second. That is the nature of progress. So although you might have reservations about the way things are moving, I don't think that you should feel that there's any way in which things can be reversed. I mean, okay, sometimes you make a mistake and you find a way to reverse that mistake, but in terms of progress, in a way you have to sort of accept progress and accept the fact that things are changing. And maybe you don't have to necessarily take everything to heart. I mean, there is a temptation there, to take things personally. Things happen out there which are not really your responsibility, but you see it happening and it really becomes personal. And, that might be about, the destruction happening around you. Maybe happening miles away, maybe happening on another part of the planet, but you do feel it all, and you would like to stop it. And can you stop it? Well, if you want to stop things, and if you want to stop things, you perhaps need a vision. Stopping things just for the sake of it is just not going to happen. But if you need to reframe things in terms of a vision of the future, a positive vision of the future. And that's perhaps something you need to work on. And it's hard work, it's difficult, but the moon is making a trine to Jupiter. And so we've got the moon in Libra making a trine to Jupiter. It's a good aspect, and I think it can help you, provided you go about it in the right way. I mean, the moon is, in fact, the moon is conjunct true black moon Lilith. Certainly at around sort of noon, late morning in New York time. Okay, that would be sort of a bit later in the day if you're in Europe. But at some stage, the moon will make that conjunction to black moon Lilith. And I think with that moon conjunct black moon Lilith, Capricorn, there is an awareness of how, in a way, bad things are. And again, when I say how bad things are, I'm not talking about you personally. I must make that clear. It's about things that you don't like happening, things that you might like to change, things that you might like to reverse. And the moon is making a trine to Jupiter. So it may be a time, Capricorn, where you have to tell people about what is wrong, what is bothering you. And that might take a lot of effort. It may not even be pleasant, but Moon trine Jupiter is going to help you. If you feel that something is not being done right, that something is being destroyed which shouldn't be destroyed, then you have to articulate it. Because if you don't articulate it, then what's going to happen? Well, nothing's going to happen, and you're just going to feel annoyed. So it's a difficult day, or in some respects, although I'm kind of making an assumption here, Capricorn, that you have a social consciousness, that you're just aware of your community and whatever. Of course, I understand that Capricorns approach things from many different perspectives, and at the moment, societal issues may not be of any real concern to you. I mean, I'm sure they are, but maybe it's not your number one priority. In which case, that Moon trine Jupiter is good. I mean, however negative you might feel, Moon trine Jupiter is about being able to get on with the job and being able to do a job very well. Okay, you might not get immediate appreciation, but you're doing a good job, and if you take advantage of all the resources available, you can handle it. And perhaps with that, the fact that the moon is conjunct true black moon Lilith, is that you can actually deal with things which are unpleasant, and you can deal with these things extremely well. And maybe Capricorn, you can take an unpleasant situation and you can somehow untangle it and sort of expose it to the light. Because when things are seen, and when you can see the complexities, then the complexities start to disappear. So there are certainly possibilities today, and if you do feel negative over the course of the day, I think you can perhaps console yourself by saying, well, the reason you feel negative is really because you're aware. Maybe, I mean, talking about the theme of this video, maybe it's because you're woke. I mean, by woke in that original meaning of the word, stay woke, being aware of the repression that some people have to experience, being aware of the injustices in the world. There's nothing wrong with that, and that's something I think that you very much are. Injustice of the world, not just to your fellow humans, but also to nature, animals, whatever it is. So you are aware, and I think it's very good that you're aware, and I think you should be pleased that you are aware. Aquarius, there are possibilities today. I mean, real possibilities. We have got the moon making a trine to Jupiter. And moon is in Libra, it's trine Jupiter in Gemini, and of course you're in Aquarius, so that's the third air sign. So moon and Jupiter are kind of trining Aquarius, so that should, Aquarius, make you feel good about yourself. Just a feeling that many different things are possible, and that there should be few limits. And I think that you're going to find that there are just a lot of things around you that you can take advantage of, and also other people are very, very energetic at the moment. Okay, in some cases they might be too energetic, or they might be energetic in the wrong areas, or things that you're not particularly into. But still, I think it can actually be a high energy day. And it may actually be at some stage that it's just getting a little bit too much, and you kind of want things to slow down a bit. But I wouldn't worry. I think Aquarius, you can improve things, you can make things better, and if there's anything you've been working on, you can actually find new ways of doing it. You might be doing a good job, but you could be doing an even better job. And also, in terms of what makes you different, what makes you so unique, you can actually find ways to be even more unique, to discover ways to really, really fine-tune who you are, and fine-tune perhaps some of your daily activities. You may be doing things every day, which you're very good at, but always consider the possibility that you could be doing them in a way that is even better. So Aquarius, it just really does matter that you don't limit yourself. There's absolutely no reason to limit yourself. And also in terms of, other people, with this, there is this Sun trine Mars, and Mars is in Leo. It's beginning, in other words, Leo is your opposite sign. So Sun trine Mars, that Sun trine Mars is exact tomorrow. And so this might relate to one particular person. So one particular person is maybe starting to shine. They're starting to, I won't say explode, but they're starting to become more prominent. They're starting to become more energized. They're starting to want attention in a new way. Now, as an Aquarius, you might not like that situation to begin with. You might find it threatening. You might find it irritating. You might find it confusing. But I think that it's very important that you really give people a chance to shine. And this is especially the case if they're close to you, or if you work with them, or you spend time with them, a lot of time with them for whatever reason. It's easy to try to limit someone, to give people reasons why they shouldn't, but that's not what it's about. That's not what it should be about. So try to be supportive, particularly when you're dealing with brilliant people, or people who are becoming brilliant, who can be brilliant. And it's a time for really to be able to foster not just your own potential, but other people's potential as well. And you can play a role. You could play a negative role, I suppose, if you wanted to. You could try to sort of pour cold water on someone's efforts to be themselves. You could do that, but I don't think you're going to want to do that. I think you can be supportive, and I think that you can actually benefit from it. You need a little bit of fire. You need sort of impetus, and where does that impetus come from? It might come from you, but it might come from another person. And so, in a way, by encouraging and supporting another person, you may be encouraging and supporting yourself. Pisces, I think that you may feel that you're just not ready, or you feel that there are things happening that you don't fully get, and you're inclined to look at things from a fairly negative perspective quite quickly. I mean, it's all about cognitions and how we respond to cognitions, and there are different ways of responding, and there may be a certain tendency, Pisces, at the moment to look at things perhaps from the worst possible perspective. There are all sorts of ways of interpreting something, but you just may interpret something in a way that is negative, and you may just think, what is the point? And perhaps, Pisces, you're just going too deeply into things. You're maybe just asking too many questions, and you're perhaps overcomplicating things. And you overcomplicate things to a stage where they just become impossible. And I think instead, Pisces, you should perhaps be making some effort to simplify things, to try to reduce things to sort of comprehensible blocks and not worry too much about the tiny details, to just to make it easy for you to understand. And do try to be reasonable. And I think that if you are reasonable, and you might actually realize that things aren't quite as bad as they seem. And in fact, Pisces, it may be just a situation where you're taking things that are completely neutral. You're seeing the worst possible view, but it's actually would be quite possible to see the best possible view. And I'm not saying that you should be over-optimistic. You should just be realistic. And realism is not about being pessimistic. Realism is the neutral state between optimism and pessimism, and that is perhaps where you should be going. Of course, it's important that you understand how things can go wrong, and I think you actually have insights into how things might go wrong, that maybe other people don't have. But just because you have an insight about a possibility doesn't mean you have a knowledge, for example, about certain disaster. No, you can maybe work on these insights. If you understand how something can go wrong, then you might be in a position to create some protection. You might have suggestions about how people might be able to protect themselves. You might have your own suggestions. So maybe there are ways in which you can protect yourself and give yourself more confidence. Because if you know where something can go wrong, then you can perhaps make sure it doesn't go wrong, because you know how it could go wrong. So that is one perspective on the day. But there are alternative perspectives. I think that with the Sun making a trine to Mars, the Sun in Sagittarius starting to make a trine to Mars, starting to make a trine to the North Node. I think I've talked about this grand trine in fire signs over the last week, and I think it does have an impact on Pisces, and I think it actually could have quite a fortunate impact on Pisces, because if you strip away all your negativity, all your reasons why things might not happen, why things might not work, you still have things that you want. There are still things that you want to achieve. And if you're honest with yourself, really honest with yourself, you may actually admit to yourself that they may actually be achievable. And I think with this Sun trine Mars, there's the indication here. And remember, this Sun trine Mars is exact tomorrow. It's not just about today. And so the next few days, this Sun trine Mars persists. With the Sun trine Mars, it seems that with the right attitude, you can put yourself actually in a great position. By the right attitude, and it's about being realistic and understanding, sure, that there's work to be done. And if you put in the work and you make the preparations and you do things carefully, then you're putting yourself in a position where there is actually a very high chance of success. However success is perceived, we all have different ideas about what success means. So if there's something you feel that you'd like to achieve it, perhaps over the next week, couple of weeks, you really would like to achieve it, then actually you can achieve it. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but you certainly have the tools to do it. But just don't trip yourself up by being pointlessly negative. And that's the day from the viewpoint of astrology. And then there is I Ching. So I asked the question, what is Monday going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was hexagram number 39. So, when I was looking at the astrology, I was trying to be positive. I thought actually it looked like being a good day. For many of us, things were starting to move. We had the moon trine Jupiter. Okay, it's true that Mercury is stationary retrograde. Maybe I was underestimating the impact of Mercury going stationary retrograde. Maybe Mercury going stationary retrograde is causing a problem, and perhaps in my astrology I wasn't giving it enough emphasis. And with hexagram 39, we've got obstruction. That is not great. It gives us the idea of not being able to move. We are almost stuck. We certainly shouldn't be trying to move forward. We should be considering going back, or perhaps perhaps we could stay where we are, but we certainly should not be going forward. And the idea here is that we've tried to move forward, we've tried to make progress, but we basically haven't got the resources to do it, and we need to hold back. And I don't even know if it's possible to retreat, because there are problems behind us and there are problems in front of us, and it may just be that we need to just stay where we are and wait for help. Maybe, remember, this reading is just for one day, and so we just don't have enough support, and we need to get hold of that support before we have any chance of moving forward. And so that I'm afraid is the way it is. And then we've got that's the fourth line moving. Then the sixth line moves, and even with the sixth line moving, that is still to an extent about having to go back. We're able to do our duty to an extent. We understand there's something we have to do, and perhaps it's actually not about us, but it's about other people. It may be that certain people have tried to do something and they're not succeeding. It's not working for them, and we don't really want to get involved. We do get involved, and we have to look at the situation and we have to give our advice, and maybe even then our advice is that it is best to pull back, that it is a situation that, at least in the short term, is not going anywhere. It's not a good idea to be aloof, I don't think, because I just said that we might need to get other people's help, but it may just be that other people might need our help, and our help is perhaps to make sense of the situation, but perhaps also to explain that this is a situation that in the short term is actually going nowhere. And we've got these two moving lines, and so because we've got these two moving lines, the fourth line and the sixth line, we do move to a different hexagram, and the hexagram it moves to is hexagram 33, which is retreat. Though that kind of confirms what we already suspected. We're in a situation and it's not going anywhere, and we need to just go back on it. It's just not going to work. And additionally, if we have our big ideas, our big plans, something, we're ready to move out, expand our horizons, all the stuff I was talking about rather over-optimistically, perhaps, when I was doing my forecast of the 12 signs. It is perhaps better to stay where we are and to perhaps take advantage of the fact that we are maybe in a protected situation. We need to gather our strength here, and that might be an alternative approach in terms of retreat, because retreat in order to gather our strength, or indeed don't even proceed, get stronger. We might be strong, but we could be stronger. And so perhaps there is a promise here that, today things might not be working out. We might not be able to achieve everything we'd like to achieve, but at a later date, when we're in a stronger position, we can perhaps have another shot at it. And now I want to consider Neptune. And the reason I'm doing this video, I suppose my immediate impulse for doing this video was this Jaguar advertisement, which has been really panned on the internet, and it's about obviously trying to push a car, and it's trying to sell a car, trying to publicize a brand, and this advertisement was regarded as being woke and rebranding it. A Jaguar is supposed to be a fierce cat. But it's a Jaguar is a big cat with teeth. It's a growler, and this ad was totally seemed to be destroying the brand. And it was all sort of woke and androgynous, and so I do think that I do relate this to Neptune and the fact that Neptune is in Pisces. So Neptune. Neptune has been in Pisces for some time. Neptune actually very nearly got into Aries earlier in the year. Nearly, but not quite. And so, Neptune. But Neptune has been, Neptune has actually been in Pisces since, there it is, February the 3rd, 2012. So since February the 3rd, 2012, we have had Neptune solidly in Pisces. So we know what is Neptune about? So Neptune is an outer planet. It was discovered in 1846. And Neptune is often connected with the sea, and it's connected with dissolving into something, and dissolving into something that is perhaps larger than ourselves, and it is a sort of a collective. It is a very, very sort of collective energy, and so Neptune is obviously a planet that for a long time people weren't aware of. But so we have a planet. We have the chart for the discovery of Neptune. So Neptune was discovered on, I think, September the 24th, 1846, sort of around midnight in Berlin. So when Neptune was discovered, it was in Aquarius, and so we should be looking at the sign position of Neptune. And that sign position is telling us how people are going to respond to this Neptune. How are they going to want to transcend? And I think it is very likely with Neptune that the people who are going to be most influenced by Neptune are people who are young. Because as you get older, you become more set in your ways. You become, you just however you define tradition, you get focused on that, and you're going to be less impressionable, perhaps. I'm not saying it's good to be older. If you're older, you're just out of touch. You're accused of living in a tree or whatever. You're not so aware of wider cultural trends. You may be aware of them, but your personality is already set. So I think it's likely that younger people are going to be more likely to be influenced by Neptune. And I'm a traditional astrologer in some respects. I do not believe that Neptune rules any sign. I absolutely don't. People say that Neptune rules Pisces. As far as I'm concerned, Jupiter rules Pisces. But I would be willing to concede that Neptune has an association with the sign Pisces. That makes absolute sense. In the same way, I'm willing to concede that Pluto has a strong association with the sign Scorpio. It would be difficult to say that Pluto did not have an association with the sign Scorpio when you think about the 80s. I think it was 1983 and 1984 when Pluto moved into Scorpio. Scorpio is all about death and transformation, and I suppose about sex as well. And of course, Pluto moving into Scorpio coincided with the AIDS epidemic. That was just so Pluto in Scorpio. Of course, people were getting AIDS before Pluto got into Scorpio, but that's when it really hit consciousness, public consciousness, and it totally changed everything. And so I think that Pluto in Scorpio was a very special, I mean, not special in a nice way, but it was a very powerful sign for Pluto to be in. And I think more powerful than when it was in some, you expect Pluto being in the cardinal signs to have been more effective, Pluto, for example, crossing into Aries or whatever, but Pluto in Scorpio was really strong. And in the same way, you might argue that Pisces was a really special place for Neptune to be in. So when Neptune went into Pisces. And because Neptune, you can see the association. People just, Neptune in Pisces, wanting to dissolve into something higher than yourself. Pisces is also about compassion and universal sympathy. And being able to empathize with everyone. And empathy is a good thing, but empathy can be taken too far. And as far as Neptune moving into Pisces, the first time that Neptune moved into Pisces after it was discovered was around 1848. And if you know your history, 1848 was the year of the revolutions. There were revolutions all over Europe. And also, we had the publication of the Communist Manifesto. So the Communist Manifesto was published on February the 21st, 1848. And so there you can see that Neptune, at the time of the publication of the Communist Manifesto, was 0 degrees 8 minutes Pisces. So Neptune in Pisces is about universal empathy. Don't forget, but people who were into communism, people like Karl Marx, they were not dirt poor. They were able to lead perfectly comfortable lives, but they had empathy for ordinary working people, regardless of what you think of communism. You had, in the 19th century, for example, people being concerned about the conditions in factories and child labour and long working hours. And, these were the concerns if you were in the West in the middle of the 19th century. In fact, the history of I remember at school doing a history of 19th century England, and it's just all about factory acts. It's actually quite boring, just factory acts, factory act after factory act. Just went on and on and on. I had a whole booklet, no, not a booklet, it was a massive book about factory acts. And so that was what what a lot of the 19th century was about. And so it is about empathy. Remember that line from the Communist Manifesto. It's a very short book, not like Das Kapital. Workers of the world, unite. You have nothing to lose but your chains. In a way, that is a very sort of Neptune in Pisces idea. And we had all of the revolutions in Europe in 1848 and 1849. Obviously Neptune was retrograding in and out of Pisces, going back into Aquarius and whatever. But people having high hopes. These revolutions happen for all sorts of reasons. Nationalism was different regions of Europe starting to develop a national identity, people coming together, perhaps being concerned about various injustices. But this was pure Neptune in Pisces. Of course, in 1848, it wasn't just that Neptune was in Pisces, Saturn was in Pisces as well. And maybe that was unfortunate, but Saturn was also in Pisces. Neptune in Pisces was about something larger than oneself, but Saturn in Pisces is saying, no, there are limits to this. There are limits to how far this can go. So Neptune stayed in Pisces for a long, Neptune stays in a sign for a long time. And just before Neptune moved out of Pisces into Aries, we had, this is the beginning, by the way, of Neptune moving into Pisces. Now, if we move towards the end of Neptune moving into Pisces, we have the start of the American Civil War. start of the American Civil War is April 12, 1861. And where was Neptune at the start of the Civil War? It was at 2957 Pisces, so Neptune was still in Pisces. And I suppose you could say that in the run-up to the Civil War, a lot of people were very concerned about slavery. They had empathy for people who were slaves. And clearly that is something that was absolutely reasonable. That is Neptune in Pisces. You should have an awareness for people who are slaves, and you should want to obviously free them, even if that means having a war about it. So, I mean, part of it, I mean, I'm not a great expert on the history of the Civil War. It's not something that I'm particularly interested in, but people in the North, white people in the North, thought it was a fundamental injustice, and I suppose with Neptune in Pisces allowed them perhaps to really tune into that injustice and to say, well, you know, we need to do something about it. So we have had Neptune in Pisces before, and so now in the 21st century, you know, we've got Neptune in Pisces again, and I must emphasize, I must be careful what I say. I don't really want to be careful what I say. I'm just saying that as I talk about Neptune in Pisces, I might at times seem to be a little bit flippant. And, you know, I understand that, you know, one is dealing with sort of a lot of sensitive areas. And so I might say something in a way that is flippant, that might seem a little bit offensive. My intention is not to be offensive. I'm just trying to sort of understand what Neptune in Pisces is actually about. And so Neptune went into Pisces in 2011, 2012, and I would have said that, you know, wokeness, perhaps, as we understand it, and I said at the beginning of this piece, wokeness had an original meaning, that wokeness, as I've said, was about in the 1930s, just, you know, as I said, stay woke, keep their eyes open. That is about being aware of systematic racism, being aware of the injustices suffered by African Americans, particularly in the South. You know, the sort of the lynchings, the trial, the Scottsboro trials, for example. There was absolute reason to be woke in that original meaning, but that meaning of woke has sort of expanded in the modern era. It means all sorts of things, and it has had a big impact on culture. So Neptune was going into Pisces on sort of 2011, 2012, and one of the events which perhaps kicked off Neptune in Pisces, again, which perhaps relates to the original meaning of wokeness, a really quite a justified sense of injustice, sense of racial injustice, would be the killing of Trayvon Martin in Florida in 2012. So Trayvon Martin was a 17-year-old African-American. He was going about his business. I think he was staying in a gated community, and this man called the Zimmerman confronted. Trayvon Martin was unarmed, and this man called Zimmerman confronted him and in the end shot him. And it was a huge event, and it gave rise to the sort of a Black Lives Matters movement, and and I think that this is clearly an event which was outrageous. It was a young African American lost his life. There was racism, and it showed that there was something very wrong with the culture, which needed to be dealt with. And Neptune was at 0 degrees 53 Pisces when that happened. So it was the beginning of It was the beginning of the Black Lives Matter movement, and you have sort of other events like the events in Ferguson and was it the George Floyd killing. So that was part of Neptune in Pisces, just being aware of injustice, and it suddenly happened. And so Neptune in Pisces, when Neptune goes into Pisces, suddenly people have empathy. They start to feel for other people who are victims of injustice, and so we I think can very much see that. And it's interesting that with the Karl Marx, with the publication of the Communist Manifesto, there was a Sun-Neptune conjunction in Pisces, and in a sense that was almost a start position for Neptune moving into Pisces. Here, there was also a Sun-Neptune conjunction in Pisces. So this was an important event, which, in some respects, started the whole thing off. And of course, people had empathy before Neptune went into Pisces, and I'm not saying that in a way my thesis isn't my thesis could be criticized as being a sort of an overgeneralization, or I'm trying to read too much into it. I mean, that is possible, quite maybe even probable, but I'm just trying to understand what Neptune in Pisces actually means. And so that is a predominant view of Neptune in Pisces. It is about expanding empathy and people being able to submerge their identities into something larger than themselves. And there may be a sense, though, that empathy reaches a point where it might get out of control. Now, there was another event in 2012, which was a very different event, which perhaps also summed up Neptune in Pisces. Happened on December the 6th, 2012. So on December the 26th, 2012, the state of Washington legalized cannabis. And so I've set this for midnight in Olympia, which is the capital of Washington state. And so this is a chart for the legalization of cannabis in Washington state. So after that date, you could open a cannabis shop. Obviously, you'd be heavily regulated, but you still could do it. And so Neptune was at 0 degrees 32 Pisces. Neptune is not just associated with empathy; it's also associated with drugs and of lots of sort of different nature. There you had Jupiter is on the midheaven. I mean, I assume that the law went into action at midnight. I'm not sure. I don't know for sure, but there was our Neptune in Pisces. So this gives us an idea about the broad picture with Neptune in Pisces. And so I suppose as Neptune in Pisces continues, we get more and more concerns about diversity, and it's not just about racism. It expands into other things. It expands into sort of the whole LGBTQ whatever, and the trans debate, and it just starts to snowball. And people have empathy with everything. And of course, the people who are going to be most impacted by this are people who are younger. I mean, that is absolutely natural. It's because if you're young, you are more flexible. You are the new generation. You pick up on what's happening with these outer planets much easier, much more easily than if you're older. I mean, that's just the way it is. And I'm not saying that young people are right or wrong. I'm just saying that has got to be the way it is. I think young people are going to be, I don't know, certainly people under 30, but maybe older. But as you get older, you just become less impressionable. And again, I'm not saying that in a way that is good or bad. There are just disadvantages in being older. You just can't see it. You just become inflexible. So it depends. And so that is how Neptune in Pisces starts to develop, and it starts to intensify. And you could look, for example, at by 2016. You look at Hillary's campaign to against Donald Trump. I mean, she was. It was very much about rainbow alliances. Hillary. I don't know. She might not have been influenced by it, but maybe the people running her campaign. That guy, what's his name, Mook, M-O-O-K. I can't remember his first name. The campaign manager. It seemed to be that. Working class voters were sort of neglected, and but somehow a rainbow alliance could somehow win the election. I mean, she nearly won, she won the popular vote, but she didn't win. And so this is the pattern. And you could say with Neptune in Pisces, you might also say, this whole universality of Neptune in Pisces. Neptune could be also not just about drugs, it could be about infection. And the COVID epidemic, I know people have different views on COVID, but clearly COVID was a global epidemic, and that might be Neptune in Pisces. Everyone becomes part of it. Everyone becomes part of this COVID culture. And of course, we've got issues of masks and vaccines and whatever, but I think maybe that was a Neptune in Pisces event also. And then we have to consider what was happening towards the end of Neptune in Pisces. We sort of perhaps reached peak woke around that. I did a search for Google. Is it Google Trends, and you search. It was around 2016, 2017. But the woke started to really go up in the search terms. So people started to look more and more for this term woke. So you started to move towards peak wokeness. And then I think we had Bud Light. Now Bud Light, I think it was very much about Neptune in Pisces. So with Bud Light, this is a date when Dylan Mulvaney, I think, launched his video on Instagram. So just to give you the background, if you don't remember, so Bud Light, obviously an iconic brand of beer, and Bud Light thought that the brand needed to be revamped, and there was a vice president of marketing called Alyssa Hennerscheid, and we'll be looking at her chart in a moment. But Alyssa Hennerscheid decided that it might be a good idea to change the focus of the brand and to consider the transgender dimension. And so Dylan Mulvaney, this transgender woman, produced this video, and I think she was trying to dress up as Audrey Hepburn, talking about Bud Light, and I think talking about a Bud Light promotion. And this killed the brand, pretty much. And so, looking at this chart, we've got our Neptune in Pisces there. So this is a very Neptune in Pisces event, but we also have Saturn creeping into Pisces. So beginning of 2023, Saturn moves into Pisces. And I think that's important. And I think that Saturn in Pisces is starting to ask questions here. Is this really the right thing to be doing? Saturn is saying, no, we don't want to just become part of some broad, woke, collective trend where we have to empathize with everyone. And of course, again, I have to be really careful what I'm saying here, but in terms of the transgender issue, as I understand it, a relatively low percent of the population are transgender. But there seems to be this universal sort of empathy for them, an empathy that has gone maybe too far, and that's become part of this sort of wokeness. And in terms of Donald Trump's re-election in 2024, there is a view that a big reason why he won was because of transgender issues. Whether it's correct or not that the Democrats were obsessed by transgender issues, by access to bathrooms. I don't want to even go into that. You know what I mean. Well, maybe you don't know what I mean. I shouldn't say that, but you're saying, who's using bathrooms that transgender women should be allowed to use male bathrooms in schools, and of course boys should be allowed to compete in girls' sports. That could be empathy that has perhaps maybe got out of control. Maybe. That's just a view. But so that's Neptune in Pisces, but there's Saturn in Pisces coming in and asking questions. So Neptune in Pisces likes to have this marketing campaign associating Bud Light with with a transgender woman, but Saturn in Pisces is saying, no, this is not actually such a good idea. And that's perhaps it was Saturn in Pisces causing the backlash. Now, turning to the horoscope of the VP of, I think, marketing, her name was Alissa Heinerscheid, and she was born on March the 4th, 1984. So kind of not surprising, but she's a Pisces. And it was her idea, and she was critical of Bud Light drinkers, saying they're too macho, they have a frat culture, and it's not funny, and all this kind of stuff. You're not supposed to attack the users of your product, but this is what she did. And here is her chart. And notice she's got Neptune at, I don't know her time of birth, but she's got Neptune at 1 degree 12 Capricorn, quite close to the Aries point. So someone with Neptune on the Aries point is perhaps into trends and into culture, and she believes she can change culture. Neptune in Capricorn, but Neptune in Capricorn, I suppose, to an extent, she's always thinking about her own interests, I suppose. There is a problem with Neptune in Capricorn, of course. Neptune in Capricorn, I know some of you listening to this might have Neptune in Capricorn, but the problem with Neptune in Capricorn is that Neptune is about dissolving into something larger than oneself, but Capricorn is a little bit self-interested. So Neptune in Capricorn is a bit like Jupiter in Capricorn. She actually has Jupiter in Capricorn as well, or Moon in Capricorn. So Moon, Jupiter and Neptune, the Moon is in its detriment in Capricorn, Jupiter is fallen in Capricorn, and Neptune really doesn't work very well here, does it? So that's her Neptune in Capricorn. And notice that her Neptune is exactly semi-square her Saturn. So that's her Neptune trying to push some new trend, but Saturn semi-square Neptune, it scotches it. It can't happen, and she has some responsibility for destroying a brand. Now, one thing I should say about Neptune in Pisces, which I haven't said so far, is that Pisces is ruled by Jupiter. I do not believe that Neptune rules Pisces. Neptune has an association with Pisces, but it is Jupiter that rules Pisces. And some people sort of don't fully appreciate that Jupiter is very moralistic. It's of all the planets, it is the most moralistic. Jupiter has definite ideas about what is wrong and what is right. And so with you think about cancel culture, and you think what happened to J.K. Rowling for supporting the rights of sort of natural women as far as she was concerned. She gets cancelled. She gets accused of being a fascist and everything else. And anyone else that follows these traditional sort of feminists like Germaine Greer, they get the same treatment. And that's Jupiter. Jupiter as ruler of Pisces. Jupiter is really moralistic. And Jupiter hates people that contradicts it. Jupiter thinks it's got it absolutely right. And so if you are on the wrong side of it, you will get cancelled. And that I think is Jupiter. That's Jupiter at work. And we then have the the latest event, which was the Jaguar advertisement. So the Jaguar advertisement, you may have seen it. It's rebranding a car, and Jaguar is a company that's been around for a long time, and it's had different incarnations. And Jaguar's latest incarnation was there was different mergings and so forth. There was Jaguar Land Rover. And Jaguar Land Rover, I believe, is owned by Tata, which I think is an Indian conglomerate. But I think this is the latest incarnation of Jaguar Land Rover. And the transition actually happened on January the 1st, 2013. And so this is potential, what I think is a chart of Jaguar Land Rover. And it happened when Neptune was at 1 degree 4 minutes Pisces. So it's a Neptune in Pisces company. And so it's kind of not surprising with this latest advertisement where it tries to rebrand Jaguar in this very woke way with these. I suppose you could say it's trying to be futuristic, but it's with these sort of androgynous people dressed in this sort of strange way that is completely like with the Bud Light thing. It's this idea that you can change a culture, and people in Jaguar have been very indignant about the criticism of the advertisement, saying, oh, it's intolerant and whatever. But again, you see, that's the fact that Neptune in Pisces is ruled by Jupiter. You moralize. You say that the people who are criticizing this advertisement are just wrong. There's something wrong with them. They're intolerant. They need to embrace the future. But, what is the future? We'll come on to that. So that's the Land Rover chart. The Jaguar Land Rover chart of the sort of broader company that owns Jaguar. And the video itself, the Jaguar ad, I don't know what time it came out, but it came out about November the 19th, 2024. And so again, Neptune is in Pisces, obviously, but Saturn's in Pisces. So the actual chart for the ad is not actually too bad. The moon's in Cancer. The moon is in mutual reception to the sun is in mutual reception to Mars. So on November the 19th, who knows? Maybe an astrologer chose that time. I mean, if they're that woke, maybe they chose an astrologer, possibly. But it did succeed in terms of everyone knows about it. I'm talking about it. It's all over the internet. So you could say that is a chart for a very successful advertising campaign. So that is a way of looking at it. But I think that you could say that Neptune is about to leave Pisces. That's a problem. And things are likely to change once Neptune does leave Pisces. I mean, one other thing about Neptune in Pisces, I've talked about race and diversity, transgender issues. There's also about the super empathy, and we had the sort of Israeli attack, Gaza's, the Hamas's attack on Israel. So this is October the 7th, 2023, when it happened. And I do actually think that this is very much part of the Neptune in Pisces thing, because as a result of this attack and Israel's retaliation on Gaza, which has been, of course, absolutely devastating. It's driven a lot of people, I don't know, almost crazy. I know it's really bad. A lot of people are getting killed, but I think this super empathy with Neptune in Pisces, when you look at sort of young people protesting on university campuses around the Western world, I think what you're seeing is Neptune in Pisces. Okay, you could say that you had a similar thing happening with the Vietnam War in the 1960s. But this seems to be a little more intense than the Vietnam War in terms of the protests and the way it's gripped people and it's taken over. You have political parties now of the left regarding Gaza as being a major policy plank. And it's also been pointed out that there is something maybe a little bit superficial about Neptune in Pisces. Before the moment, but just before the Gaza attack, everyone was obsessed about Ukraine, the poor Ukrainians. People had all their Ukraine flags hanging out after 2022 and into 2023. And then with the Hamas attack, the whole emphasis just changed straight away. So that's sort of Neptune in Pisces, that there can be a sense in which it can be a bit fickle in terms of where its priorities actually lie. I think people can change from one thing to another. Now, Neptune has been in Pisces for a long time, but it's not going to stay in Pisces forever. And Neptune, on March 30th, 2025, Neptune leaves Pisces. I mean, it goes back into Pisces through retrograde motion, but 2026, it has its last, 2026, it moves into Aries for the last time. That's it. Neptune is no longer in Pisces. So I would argue, with Neptune moving into Pisces, that this whole woke stuff it's going to be history. I mean, it's not going to be entirely. There's always been some sort of concern and empathy. That's always going to be around. But this particular phase of where we're at and empathy is going to come to an end. And I think it already came under crisis. There was always a crisis. We already had a crisis in the beginning of 2023 when beginning of 2023 when Saturn went into Pisces. People were starting to really question it in a major way. And I believe that there was an economist survey looking at America and their attitudes to wokeness, and it was showing that wokeness was very much on the decline already. But when Neptune moves into Aries, I think that there will be a shift, and the absolute obsession with wokeness, and I think it's going to also have an impact on people's the obsession with transgender issues. I think that's going to really start to come to an end. I think 2025 and 2026. I do need to give it some more thought. What it means for Neptune to move into Aries. For myself, I'm starting to think about Neptune in Taurus. I think Neptune goes into Taurus. I forgot. I know I'll be in my late 70s when Neptune goes into Taurus. I think it's when Neptune goes into Taurus, people will finally start to be concerned about the environment and what's happening to the planet. And people aren't really concerned about the planet. They say they are, but they're more. When push comes to shove, people, the Democrats, they're far more concerned about what's happening to Ukraine. Nord Stream 2 pipeline caused massive pollution, but people didn't really care about that. So I don't think that real concern and empathy with the planet and with nature is really going to happen until Neptune goes into Taurus. And I forget which year it is, but I know I'll be in my late 70s when that happens. So hopefully I'll be alive for that. I think that something is about to change, and I will be looking at it more in future videos. So thank you very much for bearing with me. I hope you enjoyed this video, or you found it useful. If you did enjoy it or you did find it useful, I'd be very grateful if you were to like this video. And if you're not subscribed, I'd be super grateful if you were to subscribe. And if you want to buy me a coffee, there is a link in the description. So thank you very much for listening again. And I will talk to you again tomorrow.